No way they do this. ESPN's draft guru Mel Kiper gives his expert advice on what the Jets should do at quarterback, and we're going to break down the strengths and weaknesses of Shedeur Sanders here on Jets Digest. So what's up, guys? I'm Matt Long. Welcome to the channel. Before we hop into the video today, only 20.4% of viewers are subscribed. So if you are not subscribed to the channel, please take a second, hit the subscribe button. It really helps me and Chris out a ton. But hopping into what we got today for Mel Kiper, he wants the Jets to trade up for Shedeur Sanders. He spoke with Field Yates, someone else in ESPN, on his first draft podcast and suggested that the New York Jets be bold enough to trade up for Shedeur Sanders, explaining how you are in a division with Josh Allen, Drake May, and Tua in a loaded AFC with great quarterbacks. You are fourth in the AFC East. Again, that's the problem. You are fourth by miles, so you got to get a quarterback. So, of course, Shedeur Sanders is projected by many analysts to be a top 10 pick in the draft this year, coming out of Colorado, where he played for the last 2 years. Him, of course, being coached by his dad, but he's not getting the hype from his last name. He has a lot of things in his game that have pushed him up to the top of the first round, where he's being projected to be drafted. Shedeur Sanders, let's take a look at some of the things that he does well. So looking at Bleacher Report's strengths for Shedeur Sanders, the first thing that you're looking for when you are thinking about drafting a quarterback in the first round are elite traits. So let's take a look and see what kind of traits Shedeur Sanders have. Elite traits are your height, or your size, which is height and weight, your arm strength, your mobility / athleticism, and then processing. So those are your elite traits. Looking at what we have here for Shedeur Sanders, he's 6'1", 198 pounds. You're looking for your quarterbacks to be 6'4", 6'5". So 6'1", obviously coming way under that threshold of what you're looking for. Bryce Young weighs 205 pounds. So Shedeur Sanders, 198 pounds, does not even weigh up to where Bryce Young is. So if you go on Colorado's roster and take a look at their height and weight, the players are allowed to tell the organization whatever height they want. Shedeur Sanders has told Colorado that he is 6'2", but that number will be either confirmed or more likely declined. It will be proven incorrect. He was rounding up with that number. He's going to come into the combine at 6'1" or 6 feet tall, but we have to wait for the combine to get that number exactly. So some of his other positives: he's a high-level passer, throws with great accuracy and ball placement from the pocket. Shedeur Sanders, he is a pocket quarterback. His mobility is not off the charts. It's not going to surprise anyone. It's not going to blow anyone away. Also, just quick, one more thing to touch on with those elite traits: the arm strength and the athleticism, they're going to be on the second page, which is his weaknesses. He does not have the elite traits that you're looking for if you want to draft a quarterback only on elite traits in the first round. So the other things he does well: displays mental resolve in late game / clutch situations, trustworthy when the game is on the line. This is a great thing to have. Shedeur Sanders, when the game's getting close, when tensions are high, more often than not, he stepped up to the plate and played a really good game and closed out the game for Colorado, led them to a lot of wins this season, almost took Colorado to the Big 12 championship game. If they beat Kansas, they would have been in that game and playing for a spot in the college football playoff, maybe even a bye week should they have beaten Kansas that game and then won in their Big 12 conference championship game as well. Next pro, accustomed to throwing from muddy pockets, he stands tall to deliver the ball downfield. So one of the biggest knocks on Shedeur Sanders is he takes a lot of sacks and he doesn't detect blitzes well and stuff, but right here, we actually have a positive made from that, because we've seen what happens to Shedeur Sanders when his blocking is not good. His first year, his junior year in college, 2023, his first year at Colorado, the offensive line was almost non-existent. It got a lot better this year when they brought in the number 1 offensive line prospect, Jordan Seaton, but it still wasn't good this year. So a lot of prospects, they're going to the NFL level, and we're thinking, wow, the offensive line around him is so good. How do we know how well he's going to play when the offensive line breaks down? With Shedeur Sanders, you already know what it's going to look like, because you know he has experience playing with an offensive line who can't protect him well enough. Plus level athlete, can create second reaction passing opportunities with his legs by extending plays. So a second reaction passing opportunity, they are referring to after the play breaks down, he's going to use his legs to get out of the pocket and then find another play, be able to create a second play out of the first play breaking down. Some quarterbacks are only one read quarterbacks. They can do what the offense is designed to do and what the play calls for, but they can't do anything else off of that. They can't make something up in their head and make a crazy play off of that. But Shedeur Sanders can, according to Bleacher Report. Also, when protected, picks defenses apart with precision and surgical process. So the thing about Shedeur Sanders is if you can protect him and the routes aren't too far down the field, he's a really good quarterback. If you were asking me, he's the best quarterback in college football. That doesn't mean, however, that I think he's the best prospect in the draft, because we need to separate a good college quarterback from a good NFL prospect. The thing about Shedeur Sanders, I don't feel bad for a lot of guys that are going to be drafted in the top 5, top 10 of the NFL draft, but I feel a little bit bad for Shedeur Sanders because all the stuff that he can control, he has done a really good job. He plays football and plays quarterback at a really high level. He just doesn't have the elite traits that should be pushing him up to a top 3 draft pick where some people are projecting, but it seems like in mock drafts, he's falling down from that spot where he was originally projected to go. So, you still see the one-off mock draft with him going first overall, but it seems like those days are days in the past for Shedeur Sanders. So if he had elite traits, he could be really, really a highly drafted guy, but he's going to fall down the board a little bit because he does not have those elite traits. So bringing up his negatives from Bleacher Report, he does not utilize his athleticism enough to escape the pocket quickly and avoid pressure. I think Bleacher Report is a little bit too high on his athleticism. If you watch him, he can use it a little bit. He can get out of the pocket. He can run for yards in a pinch, but his athleticism is not something that he can rely on or even something that he can use on a consistent basis, even in college. So in the NFL, when all the guys are bigger, faster, stronger, his athleticism, it's not going to be a weapon for him. I'm not sure it's going to be a negative, but it's certainly not going to be a positive for him. Next negative, needs to limit pocket drifting when setting pressure and step up instead. So this is an important one. When you're a quarterback sitting in the pocket, you don't want to drift in the pocket, which is stepping to your right or stepping to your left when you're looking downfield. You want to drop back on a straight line, and then when the pressure gets to you, you want to step back up in the pocket on that same straight line. This is because the offensive line is there to protect you. The offensive line, their job is to protect you in the pocket. They're not, if you drift to one side, if you drift to your right, drift to your left, they don't know where you are, and it's going to lead to holding penalties, and it's going to make it harder for them to protect you. If you drop straight back and step straight up, the offensive line can always know where you're going to be on a certain play, and they can set up their angles when blocking their defenders accordingly. So when you see quarterbacks, if they take a deeper drop back than they're supposed to, that makes it so that defensive end, he no longer has to go through your tackle. He can now just go around him because the quarterback has made the angle not as severe that the defensive end has to curve around. And you'll see, watching Quinnen Williams tape, there's a couple plays where he drops back too deep and gets a sack, and the tackle just puts his palms up. He's just saying, what do you want me to do there? I did my job. I had a good block. Quinnen Williams was too far back. And watching those plays, I go, yeah, you're right. You did do your job. But it looks like, to people who don't know what they're looking at exactly, when they're watching that film, it looks like the tackle didn't have a good block when he really did. So he also needs to improve route anticipation, tends to wait for his wide receivers to break and look for the ball before throwing. So anticipation is a very important thing that quarterbacks need to learn in college and the NFL to be high-level college quarterbacks. Anticipation is being able to throw the ball to a wide receiver before they're actually open. So they need to be able to pretty much imagine where the defense is going to be and how guys are going to move before they actually move there, so they can throw the ball earlier and the ball is on the wide receiver in the gap where it's supposed. The ball needs to arrive on the wide receivers at a certain time. And if you're waiting for them to break, there's no way for you to get the ball to the wide receiver on time anymore. So you have to be able to use anticipation to figure it out. Also, this is somewhere else where I disagree with Bleacher Report's assessment here, because to me, his anticipation was better than all the quarterbacks in this draft class. I understand this is not a good draft class for quarterbacks, but his anticipation was solid to me. I saw him throwing defenders out of trouble. If it was like a slant route and there was a linebacker over the middle of the field, Shedeur would still throw the slant to the open receiver, but he would throw it closer to the wide receiver and not lead him as far, so the receiver could stop and catch the ball and then roll over instead of running right into the linebacker and getting himself hit. So I like his anticipation. in as it compares to the other prospects in this draft. And I do think his anticipation as a college quarterback, it's pretty solid. You can't really ask for more. So I wouldn't not label that as a negative. Final point here from Bleacher Report: needs to improve instincts and feel in the pocket to avoid additional pressure and sacks in his career. The number one thing with Shedeur Sanders, he has to find a way to just limit the sacks. The number of sacks wasn't extremely high for him this year, but he is creating pressures. He's holding the ball too long, and he does too many things, like rolling out of the pocket. He does too many things that makes blocking for him even harder than it has to be on his offensive line, and he's going to have to be able to figure that out in the NFL. That's why a lot of analysts are suggesting that Shedeur Sanders sits for a year or two, and I know that's not what you want to hear out of an older-ish prospect. I guess now we're seeing really, really old guys, but he's a 4-year college quarterback, so he's not as young as he could be coming out, but he's a quarterback who's going to need time to develop in the NFL. I know a lot of this NFL, it's like now. No one has any patience for letting guys develop anymore, but with Shedeur Sanders, you got to give him time, and I really hope wherever he goes, Jets or otherwise, I really hope that he is allowed that time to develop as a quarterback. So now let's go back to our report here and see how the Jets are actually going to be acquiring Shedeur Sanders. This is Mel Kiper again. What would preclude the Jets from going up ahead of the Raiders and getting Shedeur Sanders? That's going to be interesting. Well, he didn't specify with whom the Jets would trade. Trading up from 7 to 5 with Jacksonville Jaguars seems to be the most sensible option. So, obviously, the Raiders, if they also want Shedeur Sanders, they're not going to let the New York Jets trade up over them. Right now, I do expect the Raiders to be the landing spot for Shedeur Sanders because we've seen so many connections from the organization with their owner, Mark Davis, talking about Shedeur Sanders, letting him sit in his booth for sporting events, and Shedeur Sanders posting the Raiders stuff on his social media. Shedeur Sanders and the Raiders seem like a really good fit. So if you do want Shedeur Sanders to be the Jets quarterback, we're going to have to trade up over them. So the easiest way to make that happen would be the Jets trading up to 5 with the Jacksonville Jaguars, jumping the Raiders. The Jaguars, they're going to be excited to pick up an extra day 2 pick and just move down 2 spots. They're still going to be able to get a player who can really help their team. They need tackles bad. They can't protect Lawrence at all, and they have the worst cornerback room in the league. So they would love to take a 3rd-round pick from the Jets this year and our 7th overall pick and hand us that 5th overall pick. That trade makes a ton of sense for both sides. They might say, this is a top 5 pick. You guys are getting your franchise quarterback. This is going to be more expensive than that. And if it is more expensive than that and Woody Johnson wants to make that trade, I say Woody Johnson because he calls all the shots, but it would be Darren Mougey who wants to make that trade, they're going to have to pay whatever the price is. If you're asking me, should we draft Shedeur Sanders 5th overall or 7th overall? I wouldn't do it because, like I said, in the top of the 1st round, I want to see quarterbacks with elite traits. Shedeur Sanders, he's not big enough. His arm is not strong enough. He's not athletic enough. He doesn't bring anything to the table that I don't feel like I can't teach a 6th or 7th round quarterback. There are a lot of coaches in this league that they're a little bit too high on themselves, and they look at these 3rd round, day 3 potential guys, and they go, oh, we can absolutely make that guy work. And sometimes it works out. A lot of the times it doesn't work out. But the elite traits, they have to be drafted at the top of the 1st round. That's why guys like Josh Allen, someone who has didn't even have a good college career, but they saw he was 6'5". They saw he had a rocket arm. They knew what he could be in the NFL. That's the difference between a really good college quarterback and a really good NFL prospect. But that's what I got on Shedeur Sanders. I am a Colorado football fan. Just bandwagoning them for the last 2 years. Not long term, obviously. But I want to see Shedeur Sanders do well. I just don't think he's the right pick at all for the New York Jets. Personally, I don't think he's a good pick in the 1st round at all. If you're asking me, if you're stuck around for 14 minutes of this video, you probably do care what I have to say a little bit. But, that's what I got for you guys. So if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're new. And as always, go Jets.